Do you want to see how I created these bedside tables? Well, stick around and watch this video tutorial. Let's check out what they look like before. This is what I had to work with. When I look at a piece, I want to check out what I'm working with, so I have an inspection of the back to make sure that I've got solid timber tops before I start sanding. Once I confirmed that I was working with solid timber, I needed to strip the old stain off the top because I'm going to leave the top as exposed timber. Here you'll see me using my belt sander to go across and strip the top layer of the varnish off. I use the belt sander for this because it's much quicker. I then use my Orbital sander to clean off the top, level it all out and remove any existing stain that may still be on there. I use this Orbital sander because I think it leaves a nicer finish than when I'm using the belt sander, and it just is easier to work with. Let's move on to the edges. I decided that I wanted to have those as raw exposed timber as well. It's really up to you as to whether you want to do the same and use the sander to remove all the existing stain and then have those as exposed, or alternatively, you could use masking tape and then paint those if you don't want to strip them. Remove the original hardware. You're going to need to do this whether you're going to replace it or reapply it. You need to be able to remove it so that you get a nice smooth finish. I'm going to be applying new hardware, so I'm going to be filling in these hardware holes and keeping the hardware for another piece. I found a sock, how cute! Quick tip, so it's much easier to put everything back together, number and label your drawers. It's very difficult if you don't do this when you're trying to put it all back together to know which drawer goes where. I'm going to yabber on about the same thing again, but you need to scuff sand your entire piece. Scuff sanding is so important to ensure that you get a good quality finish, and it enables your paint to really stick to your piece to create that really solid, durable finish. When scuff sanding, you don't want a grit that's too coarse and it starts to eat away into your timber and leave swirls. You really just want to have a nice grit that's going to rough up the surface. I like to use a 120 for this. If you're using power tools to scuff sand, don't forget any hard to reach areas. Just grab a piece of hand sandpaper and get into those areas too so they don't get left behind. Time to make a little bit more mess and sweep off the dust. You're just trying to clean the dust off the drawers before cleaning. I then do a bit of an overall clean. I use sugar soap wipes to just clean off any dust before I do my deep clean, and also before I apply my wood filler. This way it's clean enough that the wood filler is going to stick to the timber and it's not going to have a whole lot of dust getting into the wood filler. Filling the old hardware holes. Now I fill them a little bit of an unconventional way. I kind of use it a bit like Play-Doh, and I use my fingers to stuff it into the old original holes because there's quite a lot of room in there that you need to get the wood filler in. Here you'll see me applying the wood filler. I need to do a couple of coats, but this is my first coat where I just push it into the hole as much as I can to fill it up. Once the first layer is dry, I sand off any excess and then I apply a second layer with a spatula to get a nice smooth finish. Spatula is definitely the more conventional way to fill hardware holes, and you can use that for your first coat as well. I just find it really hard to get into those grooves when using my spatula. Time for more cleaning. This time, grab out some rubber gloves. Only these are small and they do not fit. I'm like, what is a size small? What is that? I managed to get them on my hands and then get some degreaser out to give the entire piece a really nice deep clean. The gloves are holding up, only by the time I'd finished, I had holes all through them. I mean, I don't think I have huge hands, but I'm definitely not a size small. Moving on, let's mask up the edges. Should we? Should we not? If you're interested to know about whether you mask up the edges when you're applying timber stain to the top or whether you just leave it, watch my next video. I'm going to do a quick tip tutorial for you. For these bedsides, I only masked up one of them and then I used cutting in to paint the other one. Now for your primer. Grab out some primer, but first think about what properties your primer needs. Does it need adhesion? Does it need stain blocking? Once you've decided that, you can decide which one you're going to use. For this piece, I'm using Dixie Belle Slick Stick. And time to apply your primer onto the piece. Once you finish priming, clean out your brush and roller. This was a water-based primer, so I'm just going to clean them out in water. Once you've given your primer adequate time to dry, you're going to apply your paint. For this piece, I use Fusion Mineral Paint Raw Silk. As it was quite a light colour, I needed to apply 3 coats. I had already applied the first coat. This is me applying the second coat, and then I came back and applied a 3rd coat on top. It really depends on what paint you choose, the brand, and also the colour as to how many coats you need to apply. But if you apply a darker colour, generally it requires less, whereas a lighter colour does require more coats. I decided I wanted to add some stenciling for detail. This is the stencil that I decided to use. It's called Trippy Blocks by Bells and Whistles, and I'm going to use this to create some detailing on the drawer fronts. I let my creativity take over a little bit here, and I leaned into something a little bit different. I decided that I wanted to paint the fronts of the drawers in a brown color first before I applied my stencil. So here I am applying the brown onto the drawer fronts. I also used Fusion for this, and I used the color Anglican. Sorry, I cannot pronounce that name, but if you want to know what color it is, just comment and I'll be sure to tell you. Often when I go into the piece, I don't exactly know what I'm going to create, and sometimes in the middle it changes. So then I applied the stencil and I decided that I wanted to create a textured appearance. Here I am using the lighter color, which is the original color that I painted on the bedsides, and I'm sponging through the stencil to get my textured finish in the pattern I chose. I really like how it comes together. And then I did the classic peel, remove the masking tape on the one bedside I did mask up. The only real benefit in masking is getting to do the peel. I grabbed out my Orbital sander again and removed any imperfections where the paint has bled through. I went over the top again to make it buttery smooth, and then over the sides where any paint had gotten onto that timber. Now it was time to let my creativity flow again and decide what I was going to do with the timber. I decided that I wanted to use the same brown color that I'd painted on the front of the drawers and create a paint wash so that my timber grain would still come through and I would still have that beautiful timber appearance, but that the color would be the same as the color I'd painted on the drawers. Once I'd gotten it to the consistency that I wanted, I needed to apply the paint wash onto the timber tops. I had to apply it all around the edges that I had also sanded, and then all over the top of the piece. Applying a paint wash really depends on the weather as to how long you can leave it there and how dark you want the color to be. I applied the paint wash over the entire piece quite quickly, and then I was able to grab my microfiber cloth and just remove any excess that was lying around on top of the piece. Check out the difference once I had applied the paint wash and the darkness in the timber compared to the original timber. You'll just see that it's got that really warm brown tones. Sometimes I just don't know what hardware to apply on the piece, so I grab out a whole lot of hardware and I sit it on there, having a bit of a look and feel as to which one jumps out to me that I like the best. Once I decided what hardware I needed to measure and drill new hardware holes. I filled the original holes and I'm going to have one new hardware hole in the center to apply my new knobs. Once I find that center point, I'm just going to use my drill to drill straight through so that I can apply the new hardware. The hardware that I chose for these ones are these stunning flower shell knobs. All I need to do is slide them through the hole that I just drilled and then apply the nut and the bolt on the back. I sell these knobs on my website, which you can check out via the links. Now you can see them coming together, but one last thing we need to do is add a top coat to the timber. I'm all about having as much protection as possible and creating the most durable finish that you can for your upcycled furniture. I'm applying here a clear polyacrylic on top of the piece, and I apply 4 layers because these are going to get heavy use. Didn't they turn out so amazing? I love them.